Hello, welcome to Romeo and Juliet, Act 3, Scene 2. And in this scene, it is a follow-up to Scene 1, of course, in which Tybalt killed Mercutio, and in revenge, Romeo killed Tybalt, and everyone went crazy, and the prince banished Romeo, so he has to leave town. Or, if he's seen again in town, he dies. So, something we didn't think about at all during the last scene was Romeo had just gotten married. Where's Juliet during this entire time? Juliet is at home waiting for Romeo, and that's what this scene is really about. Okay, it's Juliet's scene, and in this scene, she is going through turmoil and confusion. After a lot of intense anticipation, if you will. We have Juliet's soliloquy at the start of the scene. Then the nurse shows up and gives her the news. And that news, of course, is very confusing. And it really leads to Juliet's confusion as well. She has to sort a lot of things out in her head. And she tries to figure out what she's going to do with her life. That's this scene. So during her soliloquy, it's basically she's waiting for Romeo, which makes sense, right? She's just married, and so she has to wait now all day and wait for darkness for Romeo to come to her room at night. And a lot of this opening soliloquy, she is talking about how it just seems forever to wait, right? It's just taking a long, long time. Have you ever heard the expression, a watched pot never boils? We lose our concentration, and it's hard to wait, is basically what that is. And Juliet is having a hard time waiting. There are a lot of religious allusions she uses, and there's a lot of imageries to light. Okay. But she's now married. And this scene, she's waiting for her honeymoon a lot of the time. She's talking about Romeo coming with a night, and she calls Romeo daylight at one point. Come thou day in night. Come, Romeo, to brighten up my life in the middle of the night, right? So she's waiting for night. She's waiting for Romeo. And at one point, she talks about how when she dies, she wants to take Romeo, and cut him out into little stars. And if Romeo is up in the heavens, then everyone will be amazed at how beautiful Romeo is, not just her. I think she's talking about making her wedding public. No one knows yet. Okay, so if she can cut him out in little stars and put him in the sky, everyone will see Romeo's beauty. Everyone can also know about their marriage. It's still secret. No one knows yet. Basically, she is impatient. She's waiting for Romeo, and there's talk about her losing virginity and stuff. So it's like anyone would think on the morning of their wedding, right? So she's thinking about Romeo showing up that night, and then here comes the nurse, and the nurse has a terrible look on her face. She knows what's happened. Okay, she's heard somewhere else, and she's come to tell Juliet the news. Now, remember the last time the nurse was supposed to tell Juliet the news. She made fun of Juliet. She teased Juliet and didn't tell her right away. Well, here, she shows up. Juliet can see that the nurse is upset, and she asks, did you bring the cords, the rope ladder? And the nurse is like, yep, here they are. She flumps them down on the floor, and she starts mumbling, he's dead. Alack the day, he's dead, he's dead. And what's been on Juliet's mind? Romeo. So when she hears he's dead, when she's been thinking Romeo, Romeo, Romeo all day, she's going to assume Romeo's the one dead. And so she goes through that miscommunication, right? The nurse is, even at one point, Romeo, the nurse is like, well, he's gone, he's dead, he's killed, he's dead. Juliet's like, what? How can heaven be so envious, right? Heaven takes Romeo instead of me. And the nurse is like, Romeo can, Though heaven cannot, Romeo, Romeo, who would have thought it Romeo? So the nurse is talking about Romeo. Juliet thinks Romeo's dead. The nurse knows that Romeo killed Tybalt. That's what the nurse is upset about. So we have that communication. The nurse continues, what's going on? Has Romeo killed himself? Just tell me yes or no. I got to know what happened. And then the nurse says, I saw the wound. I saw it with my own eyes. Juliet still thinks it's Romeo that's dead. Okay, she still thinks Romeo is the one dead. And Juliet, of course, is very distraught over this. She's saying things like, oh, my heart is breaking at once to prison. I will never be free again. No more can I look on liberty. And then the nurse starts talking about Tybalt, the best friend I had, the courteous Tybalt, the honest gentleman. Oh, I should wonder why his death. And here the nurse mentions Tybalt is dead. And then Juliet has this misunderstanding that Romeo and Tybalt are slain. You know Romeo's not dead. You know Romeo killed Tybalt. In the world of literature, this is called dramatic irony. Dramatic irony is when you, the audience, know something that the characters in the play do not. You know Romeo is banished. Juliet thinks he's dead. That makes a play more interesting. When we did our one-act plays last quarter, many of you had some good dramatic irony in your play. Think about your play. Was yours one of them? Basically, the nurse is a poor communicator. And Juliet figures it out. When she figures it out, she basically says, oh God, did Romeo's hand shed Tybalt's blood? What? Did Romeo kill Tybalt? And the nurse is like, oh, yep, he did. And then Juliet is thrown into a world of confusion. Think about that. Where do your loyalties lie? What's most important in your life? Is it your family? Is it a boyfriend or girlfriend? Is it your religion? What is most important? What if whatever it is that's most important does something wrong that you disapprove of? What now? Are you going to dismiss this person that you put above everybody else? And Juliet's, in her confusion, she speaks in oxymorons. Right? She has almost half a page full of these oxymorons. She talks about a serpent heart with a flowering face. A serpent is a snake, but it's beautiful on the outside. She talks about, oh, let's see here. But there are several oxymorons. And you know what an oxymoron is? An oxymoron is a statement that is, it contains opposites. And an oxymoron is great for showing emotional turmoil. Romeo did this in the first act. Feel free to look that up again. Juliet is doing it now. She's going through emotional turmoil. And she shows it by talking in oxymorons. He's like a... Gonna pause. Zoom. Did ever a dragon keep so fair a cave? Right? Dragon, hideous, and fair is beautiful. A dove-feathered raven, a wolfish, ravening lamb. The despised substance of divinest show. Right? Here's something that is terrible and, we hate it, but yet it is divine. It's heavenly. So she has all these oxymorons that she goes through. And she's going through and complaining. And the nurse interrupts her and says, there's no trust, no faith, no honesty in men. They are all perjured. They all lie. So the nurse jumps on Juliet's bandwagon, kind of complaining. And then the nurse, after saying this, Juliet changes her mind, and all of a sudden stands up for Romeo. She tells the nurse, "Blister to your tongue. Don't say anything bad about my husband." And the nurse calls her on it and says, "What? Are you going to speak good of the person who killed your cousin?" And Juliet right back is like, "Am I going to speak bad of my husband? It's not what you do." And so her loyalties now fall back on her husband. And she talks about that. And she talks about, "My husband lives. Tybalt would have slain him." She knows Tybalt has a fiery temper. She knows that Tybalt will kill her husband. Okay, she's never talked about this before, but as she thinks about it, she understands. And so it's better that her husband lives than her cousin who would have killed him. Which is the power of marriage, the power of love. When you fall in love, when you get married, your entire focus is on your new spouse. That person is now the most important person in your life. Hopefully, that's the way it works out. And for Juliet, that's how it works out. So she's now sided with her husband. And she's going to figure out the rest of her life. What happens now? Her cousin's slain. Her husband's been banished. What's she going to do? And she realizes that Romeo's banishment is the worst thing that can happen. She will never see her husband. There's talk about going and talking to her parents, which is a great idea, but her parents are busy. They're crying and wailing over Tybalt's death. They know it's Romeo's fault. We know that Juliet's mother wants Romeo dead. Remember what she said in the last scene. Juliet mourns that she is going to die a virgin, right? She's not going to marry anybody else. And so that's the end of her livelihood, basically. And the nurse helps her out at the end of the scene, right? She says she knows where Romeo is hiding. She tells Juliet, "Hide to your chamber. Go to your room. Just wait there. I'll find Romeo to comfort you. I will go find Romeo. I think I know where he's at. I wot well where he is. I know well where he is." The nurse knows where Romeo is hiding. Romeo has not left town yet. Okay. So harkee. So listen to me. Romeo will be here at night. I'll go to Friar Lawrence's cell and find Romeo. So the nurse knows that Romeo is hiding out of Friar Lawrence's, which makes sense. Romeo had to run away. His only friend left, other than Benvolio, would be Friar Lawrence or Juliet. He didn't go to Juliet's yet, so he went to Friar Lawrence's. The next scene, we will be at Friar Lawrence's. Juliet gives the nurse a ring, and the nurse is supposed to take that ring and give it to Romeo. So in the next scene, we will see Romeo waiting to see what happened with his banishment. Have a great day.